Time Loophole Repeated Lives. Chapter 1. The birth of Max Donovan. Max Donovan was born on a perfectly ordinary Wednesday, in a perfectly ordinary town, to perfectly ordinary parents. He came into the world kicking and screaming, already defying the expectation that life would be simple for him. Max was no sooner swaddled and handed to his mother when the nurse declared, "This one's got a fire in his belly. Mark my words, he's going to make waves." But Max's childhood, at least in the early years, didn't show much sign of those waves. He was a quiet boy, one who liked to watch more than act, taking in the world with a furrowed brow. "Max, why don't you join the other kids in the sandbox?" his mother would call out from the bench as he stood, stoic, at the playground's edge. "Maybe next time," he'd reply with a shrug, as if already weighed down by the futility of digging a hole that would just fill up again. Max's parents weren't quite sure what to make of him. "He's so serious," his father would remark. "You'd think he was an old man trapped in a boy's body." Max's mother would laugh, patting her husband's hand. "Maybe he's just wise beyond his years," she'd say, though she secretly wondered if maybe her son was too thoughtful for his own good. Despite his quiet nature, Max had a sharp wit and a penchant for turning mundane moments into dry humor. One evening, while sitting at the dinner table, he asked his father, "Dad, if life is a highway, then why do we spend so much time stuck in traffic?" His dad choked on his mashed potatoes, laughing. "That's the question, isn't it, son?" The question of life's meaning would stick with Max, lingering in the back of his mind like a catchy tune you can't quite shake. Little did he know, that question would become the very center of his existence, and he'd be giving more than enough time to figure it out. Chapter 2. The first loop begins. Max's first experience with a time loop happened on an entirely unremarkable day. He was 13, sitting in class, staring out the window while his teacher droned on about the Pythagorean theorem. His eyelids grew heavy, and before he knew it, his head hit the desk with a soft thunk. When he opened his eyes, everything felt different. The classroom was the same, the students were the same, but something in the air felt off. That day passed in a blur, and by the time Max crawled into bed, he dismissed the odd sensation as nothing more than a strange dream. But when he awoke the next morning, something unsettling happened. It wasn't just the same day again, it was the exact same day. The same Pythagorean theorem lesson, the same lunch period where Tim spilled his juice, the same dull evening watching TV with his parents. Max rubbed his eyes in disbelief. "Am I stuck?" he whispered to himself. It wasn't long before he started testing his theory. He tried skipping school one day, only to wake up the next morning, back in that classroom, listening to the same monotonous voice of Mr. Jenkins. "Great," Max muttered. "I'm trapped in math class for eternity? This has to be some kind of cosmic joke?" His early attempts to break free were comical at best. Max tried everything from staying up all night, only to fall asleep the moment the clock struck midnight and reset the loop, to giving outrageous answers during class. The answer to the square root of 144 is pizza. Nothing worked. The universe was having none of it. By the third loop, Max began to settle into the absurdity of it all. "Well, if I'm going to relive this, might as well make the most of it," he told himself with a shrug. And so began his quest to master every single aspect of his day. He started answering all of Mr. Jenkins' questions with perfect accuracy, became the undefeated champion of lunchroom chess, and even memorized every joke Tim told about spilled juice. Chapter 3. The loop deepens. Weeks passed, or at least, what felt like weeks. Max had no way of telling how much real time had gone by, since he was stuck in the same 24 hours. The novelty of his situation wore off, replaced by a dull, gnawing sense of frustration. How long is this going to go on? He would shout into the void, though no one seemed to answer. His parents remained blissfully unaware, treating each day as if it were brand new. "Did you have a good day at school, Max?" his mother would ask, and Max would reply, "If only you knew, Mom. If only you knew." One night, Max sat in his room, staring at the ceiling. "Why me?" he muttered. "What am I supposed to learn from all this? Am I being punished for something? Is this some kind of sick cosmic game?" He half expected a booming voice from the sky to answer, but all he got was the sound of crickets outside his window. As the loops continued, Max started experimenting with more radical changes. One day, he skipped school entirely and hitchhiked to the next town over, spending the afternoon exploring a park he'd never seen before. Another day, he stood up on his desk in the middle of class and belted out a rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody. The kids laughed, the teacher scolded him, but the next day? It was all reset. But in the middle of the chaos, Max started to notice something strange. Small details began to change. His father, who normally grumbled over his coffee, cracked a joke one morning. Tim, who usually spilled his juice, managed to hold onto it one day without incident. These tiny shifts made Max wonder, was the loop changing him, or was he changing the loop? That thought stuck with him, nagging at him like an itch he couldn't quite scratch. "Maybe I'm not stuck here to be punished," Max mused one evening. "Maybe I'm supposed to be figuring something out. Maybe this is about me." Chapter 4: The Mirror and the Message. Max's suspicions were confirmed one day when, during an otherwise normal loop, he encountered something that made his heart skip a beat. In the hallway of his school, standing in front of the trophy case, was a man who looked exactly like him except older. The man turned and smiled, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "About time you showed up," the older Max said casually, as if greeting an old friend. Max blinked, stunned. "Who? What? How?" he stammered. The older Max laughed, the sound eerily familiar. "Oh, don't act so surprised. You knew something like this was coming. Didn't you ever wonder why the loop started?" Max was speechless, his mind spinning in 1,000 directions. "Who are you?" he finally managed to ask. The older Max tilted his head. "I'm you, of course. Or rather, the version of you that figured things out." "Figured what out?" Max asked, exasperated. The older version of him smiled knowingly. "The answer to why you're stuck in this loop. It's not about punishment or some random cosmic glitch. You're stuck because you need to figure out what really matters. You're here to understand yourself." Max frowned, feeling like he was trapped in some kind of philosophical riddle. "What do you mean?" "I'm just me. I know who I am." "Do you?" the older Max asked, raising an eyebrow. "You have spent so much time running through the same day, making jokes and causing chaos, but have you actually stopped to look at yourself? To understand why you're in this loop?" The younger Max stared at his older self, feeling a wave of frustration and confusion. "This is supposed to teach me some kind of lesson about myself? What am I? Some character in a cheesy after-school special?" The older Max chuckled. "Not quite, but close. You'll get there. Eventually." Chapter 5: Revelations and Realizations. In the days or loops that followed, Max couldn't shake his encounter with his future self. The conversation had left him both intrigued and unsettled. What did his older self mean by understanding? Was there some deeper truth to be discovered, or was this just some weird, existential joke? Max wasn't sure, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to keep stumbling through these loops without some answers. "All right," Max muttered to himself one morning as he looked in the mirror. "Let's figure this out." He decided to start small, paying attention to the details of his day that he'd previously ignored. Maybe the clues were hidden in the mundane moments, the things he'd taken for granted while trying to break free. At first, it felt pointless. He went through the same routines, saw the same people, and yet, as the loops continued, Max began to notice the subtle ways his behavior affected those around him. The smile he gave his mom at breakfast seemed to brighten her entire morning. A kind word to Tim at lunch stopped him from spilling his juice. It was like the universe was showing Max the impact he had on others if only he bothered to notice. One afternoon, Max found himself sitting in the school library, flipping through a book on philosophy. He wasn't sure why he picked it up, but something about the title caught his eye: The Self in the Mirror. As he read, Max came across a passage that made him pause. "Life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a reflection to be understood," the book read. "The more we search for meaning outside ourselves, the more elusive it becomes. True understanding comes from within." Max closed the book, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over him. "Is that it?" he thought. "Am I supposed to stop looking for a way out and start looking within?" It was a simple idea, but the more Max thought about it, the more it made sense. He had been so focused on escaping the loop that he missed the opportunity to learn from it. Chapter 6: A New Approach. Armed with his new perspective, Max approached the loops with a renewed sense of purpose. No longer was he merely going through the motions or seeking to break free from the cycle. Instead, he began to focus on self-improvement and understanding the subtleties of his relationships and actions. The first step in Max's new approach was to be more present in his interactions. He started noticing the little things he had previously overlooked: his mother's tired eyes, his father's quiet support, and Tim's awkward attempts at humor. Max began to actively engage with those around him, offering genuine conversations and heartfelt connections. One morning, as he sat down for breakfast, Max decided to try something different. Instead of the usual routine, he looked at his mother and said, "You know, Mom, I really appreciate everything you do for us. Your coffee is always the perfect blend of strength and comfort." His mother's eyes widened in surprise, and she smiled warmly. "Thank you, Max. That means a lot to me." Tim, too, noticed a change in Max. At lunch, when Tim started telling his usual joke about spilled juice, Max listened attentively and laughed heartily. "You know, Tim," Max said with a grin, "your jokes always manage to brighten my day. Keep 'em coming." Tim, clearly pleased, beamed with pride and threw in an extra punchline just for Max. Max also took time to reflect on his own actions and reactions. Instead of reacting impulsively or cynically, he started to approach each moment with patience and curiosity. He found himself enjoying the repetitive nature of the loop, seeing it not as a curse but as an opportunity to explore different facets of himself and his world. The more Max engaged with his surroundings, the more he noticed small, positive changes. His interactions became more meaningful, and his relationships deepened. The loop, which once felt like an endless drop, now seemed like a canvas for personal growth and self-discovery. As he continued this new approach, Max began to feel a shift within himself. The constant repetition of the same day no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it became a platform for self-improvement and a chance to make a genuine impact on those around him. Chapter 7. The Unexpected Visitor. One day, as Max was wandering through the school library, he noticed a familiar face among the stacks of books. It was a young woman he didn't recognize, with a kind smile and an air of calmness. She seemed to be engrossed in a book, but when she saw Max, she looked up and gave him a warm nod. "Hello, Max," she said, her voice gentle and reassuring. "I've been expecting you." Max was taken aback. "You know my name?" "How do you know me?" The woman chuckled softly. "You could say I've been watching your progress. My name is Clara. I'm here to help you navigate this journey." Max's curiosity was piqued. "Help me? With what?" Clara closed her book and gestured for Max to sit beside her. "You have been working hard to understand yourself and improve your interactions, and that's commendable. But there's more to learn, and I'm here to guide you." Max was skeptical but intrigued. "All right, Clara. What's the next step?" Clara smiled. "You're already on the right path. But sometimes, it's important to take a step back and reflect on your experiences. Look at the bigger picture and see how your actions fit into the grand scheme of things." As they talked, Clara shared insights and wisdom, helping Max see connections he hadn't noticed before. She encouraged him to explore different aspects of his life, including his dreams, fears, and aspirations. Through their conversations, Max began to gain a deeper understanding of himself and his place in the world. Their meetings became a regular part of Max's routine. Each time they spoke, Clara offered new perspectives and challenges, helping Max continue his journey of self-discovery. Though the loop remained unchanged, Max felt as though he was making genuine progress, both personally and in his interactions with others. Clara's presence was a comforting reminder that, even within the confines of the loop, there was room for growth and transformation. And as Max continued to learn and evolve, he couldn't help but wonder what other surprises the loop had in store for him. Chapter 8. The Turning Point. Max's interactions with Clara had a profound impact on his outlook. He began to approach his daily routines with a sense of purpose and curiosity, seeking to uncover deeper truths about himself and the world around him. His efforts to improve his relationships and personal growth continued to bear fruit, leading to noticeable changes in his interactions with others. One day, as Max was helping Tim with a math problem, he noticed something unusual. Tim's face was flushed with frustration, and he was on the verge of tears. Max, sensing Tim's distress, took a deep breath and approached him with empathy. "Hey, Tim," he said softly. "I know this is tough, but you're doing great. Let's work through it together." Tim looked up, surprised by Max's kindness. "Really? You think I'm doing okay?" Max nodded. "Absolutely. Everyone struggles sometimes. The important thing is to keep trying and not give up." Tim's expression softened, and he smiled gratefully. "Thanks, Max. That means a lot." Max's act of compassion had a ripple effect. Tim's mood improved, and he began to approach his studies with renewed determination. Max felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that his actions had made a positive difference in someone's life. Later that day, as Max walked through the park, he reflected on his progress. He realized that the true value of the loop was not just in escaping it but in the personal growth and connections he had made along the way. Each interaction, each moment of self-reflection, had contributed to his understanding of himself and his role in the world. As the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Max felt a profound sense of gratitude. The loop had taught him valuable lessons about empathy, resilience, and the importance of human connections. And as he continued his journey, he knew that the experiences he had gained would stay with him, regardless of what the future held. Chapter 9. Breaking Free. Max's journey of self-discovery reached a crucial turning point. He had made significant progress in understanding himself and improving his relationships, but the loop remained unchanged. He began to wonder if there was something more he needed to do to break free from the cycle. One evening, as he sat by the window, lost in thought, Clara appeared beside him. "You have come a long way, Max," she said with a smile. "But there's one final lesson you need to learn." Max looked at her, puzzled. "What's that?" Clara's expression was thoughtful. "True freedom comes from letting go. You've been so focused on understanding and improving that you've forgotten to simply live in the moment. Sometimes, the key to breaking free is to embrace the present and let go of your need to control everything." Max's heart sank. "You mean I've been trying too hard?" Clara nodded. "Yes. The loop is a reflection of your inner state. When you learn to let go and live in the present, you'll find that the loop loses its grip on you." The idea resonated deeply with Max. He realized that his constant striving for answers and solutions had kept him trapped. Perhaps the key to breaking free was to embrace the present moment and trust in the process. That night, Max decided to let go of his expectations and simply enjoy the day. He spent time with his family, engaged in activities he loved, and appreciated the beauty of the world around him. He let go of the need to analyze every detail and simply embraced the experience. As the day came to a close, Max felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced before. The loop, once a source of frustration, seemed to lose its hold. He felt lighter, more connected to the world and himself. And as he went to sleep that night, he wondered if this newfound sense of freedom might be the key to breaking the cycle. Chapter 10. The Final Revelation, continued. Max's journey had taught him valuable lessons about self-improvement, acceptance, and the importance of living in the moment. He realized that true freedom came from within, and that by embracing the present and letting go of his need to control everything, he had unlocked a deeper understanding of himself and his world. As Max walked through the familiar halls of his school, the air felt lighter, almost as if the walls themselves were breathing a sigh of relief. Each interaction, each conversation, seemed to flow with a new ease. The constant weight of the loop had been lifted, and Max felt as though he was stepping into a fresh new reality, one he had shaped with his newfound insights. In class, he found himself participating with a sense of calm and confidence he hadn't experienced before. The questions and answers, once mundane and repetitive, now seemed like opportunities for genuine connection and growth. Max engaged with his classmates in a way that felt authentic and fulfilling, leaving behind the need to escape and instead savoring the present moment. At lunch, Max noticed Tim's usual clumsiness had diminished, and their conversation flowed with a natural ease. "You know, Tim," Max said, with a playful glint in his eye, "I think your juice-spilling days are over. You're a pro now." Tim laughed, clearly enjoying the camaraderie. "Thanks, Max. You've been a good friend through all this." Max's relationship with his family had also transformed. At dinner, he shared stories and jokes with a sense of genuine connection. His parents, once oblivious to the nuances of his struggles, seemed to appreciate the depth of his thoughts and feelings. "Max," his mother said with a smile, "you have been a wonderful presence in our lives. We're so proud of you." As the day drew to a close, Max found himself alone in his room, reflecting on the journey he had undertaken. The loop had been a challenging and at times frustrating experience, but it had led him to a profound realization that true freedom and self-acceptance came from within. By embracing the present, letting go of the need for control, and focusing on personal growth, He had transformed not only his own life but also the lives of those around him. Just before he went to bed, Max noticed something unusual, a subtle shift in the world around him. The sky outside his window seemed brighter, the sounds of the city more vibrant. It was as if the universe itself was celebrating his newfound sense of freedom and understanding. Max closed his eyes, a smile playing on his lips, and drifted into sleep. As he lay there, he felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. The loop had come to an end, but the lessons he had learned would stay with him forever. He was no longer bound by the constraints of time. Instead, he was free to explore the endless possibilities of his own life. And as he dreamed of the future, Max knew that whatever came next, he would face it with the wisdom and grace he had gained through his journey. He had found his place in the world, and with it, a sense of purpose and fulfillment that would guide him through the rest of his days. Epilogue: The new dawn. Months passed, and Max continued to navigate his life with a newfound sense of clarity and joy. The lessons he had learned during his time in the loop had become an integral part of who he was. He approached each day with an open heart and a willingness to embrace the present moment. He had become a source of inspiration for those around him. His friends and family marveled at his transformation and the positive impact he had on their lives. Max had found a way to blend humor and insight, turning everyday interactions into opportunities for connection and growth. One day, while walking through the park, Max saw a young boy sitting alone on a bench, looking troubled. Remembering his own struggles, Max approached the boy with a friendly smile. "Hey there," he said gently, "is everything all right?" The boy looked up, surprised by Max's kindness. "I'm just feeling a bit lost," he admitted. "Like I'm stuck in a never-ending cycle." Max nodded sympathetically. "I know how you feel. Sometimes, life can seem like it's repeating itself over and over. But trust me, there's always a way to break free and find your own path." As they talked, Max shared his own story, the lessons he had learned, and the importance of embracing the present. The boy listened intently, his eyes lighting up with hope and understanding. Max left the park that day with a sense of fulfillment, knowing that his journey had come full circle. He had found a way to give back, to share his wisdom with others who might be facing their own challenges. And in doing so, he had discovered that the true meaning of life was not just about escaping the loop but about making a positive impact on the world around him. As the sun set on another beautiful day, Max looked up at the sky and smiled. He had found his place in the world, and with it, a sense of purpose and contentment that would guide him through whatever came next. The journey of self-discovery had led him to a new dawn, and he was ready to embrace it with open arms.